Hello there everyone and welcome back to the item guide. Today we are going to be focusing on magic items with an offensive focus. So these are the items that are typically going to be picked up on mages or the magical junglers. Let's dive in. So to start things off, I want to talk about the different boots options that exist for magical classes inside of Smite. First up, we have Shoes of the Magi. This is the go-to option for the typical burst damage playstyle. Now, on the other side of the coin, we do have Shoes of Focus, which in my opinion is the best boot start for both Guardians and magical solo laners, even if it provides absolutely no defense and is an offensive item. The final boot that falls into the powerful category is Traveler's Shoes. It makes it so that you move really fast whenever you leave the fountain. I have no character that comes to mind when I think of characters that would benefit from this item. At least for the physical version, you had Mercury, but for the magical option, this item is just useless. So now for the rest of the item options, we're just going to be going through them in order based off of what I have on my script in front of me. First up, we have Pythagorean's Piece, and this is a really interesting item because it's an offensive aura item. This is a really good item to pick up if you are behind because you're not just going to be helping out yourself, you're going to be helping out and giving stats to your team. This is a really underrated item, and I wish more people picked it up. Next, we have Bancroft Stalin, and Bancroft Stalin on its own gives you a lot of power and a decent amount of lifesteal. But what makes this item insane is the fact that as your health bar gets lower, you are going to do more damage and steal more life based off of how low your health is. When you're at 25% health, this can give you another 100 power and 20% lifesteal for free. This item is actually a really good item to pick up right after boots, or sometimes, if you're feeling cocky, before boots. Now for Typhoon's Fang. This item is really good on characters that like to stack magical lifesteal. What it does is it basically just flat increases the amount of health you gain by lifesteal by 40%. And on top of that, you're going to gain magic power based on the amount of magical lifesteal that you have. Item is nutty, it's really good on characters like Anubis, it's honestly a must buy for that character. Next up we have Soul Gem, and this item is a lot of fun on certain characters that can apply it well. Basically what this item does is every time you hit an ability on gods or minions, you gain a stack, and on 4 stacks, your next ability that damages a god deals the ability damage plus 30% of your magical power. Now this applies to every god that you hit with the ability, and as such, a good example of a character that thrives with this item is Nuwa, because you stack this ability and then you ult, and then every character on the map takes a lot of damage. Now let's talk about the rings. First, Demonic Grip. This item makes it so whenever you're landing an auto attack, you're going to reduce the magical protections of the target by 12%, max 3 times. This is really good for auto attack based characters like Chronos, Freya, or Sol. Next we have Telkine's Ring. This is just a lot of power, but what makes this item special is every basic attack that you land deals an additional 10% of your magical power. Since this effect does not affect structures, it's not a great pickup. The 10% per auto isn't great when you could just build, say, Polynomial, but more on that later. Next we have Shamans Ring, and Shamans Ring is a stacking item, but instead of stacking by killing minions, you are going to stack by dealing player damage. Once you deal 5,000 damage with this item, you are going to gain an evolved passive, which makes it so that all enemies hit by your abilities take 10% additional damage from you for the next 5 seconds. Super good item. This item works really well on characters that are going to be combo heavy or poke heavy, characters like Agni or Zeus, for instance. Hastin Ring. This makes it so that when you hit a god with a basic attack, you are going to be immune from the auto attack casting penalty for 6 seconds. Which is crazy. It's a really good item for the magical ADCs like Sol, Freya, and Chronos. Obsidian Shard is a great penetration option for those of you that are going to be dealing burst damage. You ignore 15% of the god's magical protections, and it scales up if they have an excessive amount. Divine Ruin makes it so that all enemies hit by your abilities receive less healing. Do note that this does stack with items like Brawler's Beat Stick. Pick this up if the enemy has a healer. Spear of the Magus is the penetration option for characters that deal their damage over a series of ticks. What this does is every single time one of your abilities damages the target, that target is going to lose 10 magical protection. As such, characters like Zhang Kui or like Jing Chan, Kukulkan really get a lot of mileage out of this item because they are going to make them lose 50 magical protections. Spear of Desolation makes it so that if you kill or assist an enemy god, all of your cooldowns are reduced by 1 second. The passive on this item is useless. However, if you are looking for a lot of power, this isn't a bad option. Next up, we have Gem of Isolation, which makes it so that all of your damaging abilities create a slow on the target. This refreshes every single time an ability ticks. As such, this is a really good item on characters that deal their damage over time. If you're looking to control the battlefield a little bit more, pick this item up. Slows are annoying and a lot of people won't beats them. Next up, we have Ethereal Staff, and what this item does is it makes it so that every 15 seconds, you can steal mana and health from an opponent. This item is really good on magical solo laners in the late game because it gives their abilities an extra punch and allows them to use the stolen health to be tankier and better in fights. Next up, we have Rod of Asclepius, which makes it so that all allied gods around you have all healing that they receive increased by 10%. This is a really good item for healers like Hel, Aphrodite, or Chang'e. Next, let's talk about Polynomial, which gives you a lot of power and a really great passive in that after you use an ability, the next basic attack has a little extra effect that deals an additional 75% of your magical power on the target. This affects structures, so characters like Sol, Chronos, or Freya can use this item really well to help them melt towers. Next up, we have Soul Reaver, which makes it so that all of your abilities deal their ability damage plus an additional 2% of the target's maximum health. Now, if your targets do have a lot of health, this effect does scale up a little bit. As such, it's pretty effective against tankier team comps. Next up, we have Radha-Hootie, and this item makes it so that once your target is below 50% HP, you are going to deal an additional 25% magical damage against that person. This item is really good on characters like Kukulkan or Anubis that have ticking damage, but if you're a burst character, don't pick this item up. Yes, it gives you a lot of power, but like the passive useless. Next, we're going to talk about Chronos Pendant, and this is the go-to cooldown reduction item for all magical players that are dealing damage. This item gives you 20% cooldown reduction off the bat, but it also gives you a passive so that every 10 seconds, all of your cooldowns lose a second off that cooldown, making it by far the most potent cooldown reduction item in the game. Now, to finish today, we're going to talk about the stacking items, namely Book of Thoth and Warlock Staff. Both of these items are not great pickups. The reason being is they just take way too long to come online. I don't want to have to spend the first 50 minutes of the match stacking this item. I want to build and invest in other items that are going to make it so that my damage does damage now when I need it to do damage. There is only one exception to both of these items. Kukulkan should always build Book of Thoth because it directly feeds into his passive, and Zhongqi can get away with building Warlock Staff, but it doesn't mean that he should. Do note, I'm not saying you can't build those items, I'm just saying that there are better options that exist for you. But yes, that is all the offensive focused magic items in Smite. Next week we are going to go start talking about protections. So, thank you all so much for watching, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you guys in the next video. Have yourselves a casual day.